Dr. Lyra Hale had survived 3 planetary evacuations, 2 ship crashes, and a diplomatic incident involving fermented frozen fruit that the Galactic Council still refused to discuss. She'd earned her reputation as the most unshakable human in the Outer Reach colonies, and she wore that title like armor. So when Rico, a young Vexari medical intern with fur the color of storm clouds and eyes too large for his face, asked her how she was feeling after the station's artificial gravity had flickered during her shift, she gave him the same answer she'd given everyone for the past 15 years. "I'm fine." Rico's ears flattened against his skull. A gesture Lyra had learned meant concern among his species. The Vexari were relatively new to the Galactic Medical Corps, their homeworld only having achieved space travel 2 generations ago. They were eager, curious, and most annoyingly perceptive. "Dr. Hale, you hit the bulkhead pretty hard. Maybe you should—" "I'm fine, Rico." She smiled, the expression tight at the corners. "I've had worse. Much worse. Go check on the Zenthi patient in Bay 3. Their molting cycle is due." The young Vexari hesitated, his tail curling in that peculiar way that suggested he wanted to argue. But Lyra had already turned back to her workstation, her fingers flying across the holographic interface as she reviewed patient charts. The conversation was over. Rico left without another word. What Dr. Lyra Hale didn't know was that Rico had been observing her for months. Not in any sinister way, the Vexari didn't have the cultural framework for deception that humans seem to master effortlessly. No, Rico watched her because he was worried, and because, unlike humans, the Vexari had been raised in communal dens where hiding pain was considered not just foolish, but dangerous to the pack. He'd seen the way Lyra favored her left side, the micro-expressions of pain that flickered across her face when she thought no one was looking, the way she took longer routes through the station to avoid stairs, the tremor in her hands during third shift that she masked by gripping her datapad tighter. Humans called it being fine. Vexari called it silent suffering before the fall. So Rico did what any concerned pack member would do. He talked to the other cubs. Within an hour, every Vexari intern on Station Kepler 7 knew about Dr. Hale's condition, or rather, her refusal to acknowledge it. Within 2 hours, they'd formulated a plan. Within 3, they'd hacked into the station's biometric monitoring system. It wasn't difficult. Humans had designed the security protocols. And humans, for all their brilliance, tended to assume that medical interns were too inexperienced to be threats. The Vexari cubs had learned programming in their dens before they could walk upright. They pulled every biometric scan from every corridor, every room, every medical bay Lyra had entered in the past 6 months. Heart rate variability, gait analysis, thermal signatures, micro-expressions captured by security feeds, even the pressure sensors in the floor plating. The data painted a picture that made Rico's fur stand on end. 3 cracked ribs, healing poorly. Chronic inflammation in her left knee. Neural degradation in her cervical spine consistent with repeated traumatic injury. Blood pressure readings that suggested she was running on stimulants and sheer willpower. And a recent head injury from the gravity fluctuation that showed signs of a minor concussion she was actively ignoring. "She's dying," whispered Prin, another cub, her whiskers trembling. "Slowly. But she's dying. And she's still working 12-hour shifts. She's human," Rico corrected quietly. "This is what they do." The Vexari had studied human history as part of their integration into the galactic community. They'd learned about soldiers who fought on broken legs, scientists who worked through terminal illnesses, parents who sacrificed everything for their young. The humans called it courage. The Vexari called it terrifying. But they also understood something that many species didn't. Humans didn't know how to accept help. They'd been conditioned by their harsh homeworld, their brutal history, to believe that showing weakness was a death sentence. That fine was the only acceptable answer. So the cubs didn't confront her. They didn't file a formal medical report. They didn't go to the station commander. Instead, they fixed her. Over the next 2 weeks, Lyra noticed small changes. The stimulant dispenser in the medical bay seemed to malfunction, forcing her to take breaks. The route to her quarters was under maintenance. detoured past the physical therapy center, where a Vexari therapist happened to mention a new treatment for chronic pain. Her workstation chair was replaced with one that had better ergonomic support. The medical nanites in the station's water supply standard for all stations had their dosage mysteriously increased. Rico personally recalibrated the mixture to target inflammation and bone regeneration. Her favorite coffee blend started including supplements for neural health. The lighting in her quarters adjusted to promote better sleep cycles. Even her datapad's interface changed, subtly encouraging her to delegate more tasks to the interns. Lyra noticed. Of course she noticed. She was too sharp not to. But every time she tried to confront someone, she was met with wide, innocent vexary eyes and earnest denials. The chair was scheduled for replacement anyway, Dr. Hale. The maintenance was logged weeks ago. I just thought you might like to try the new blend. 3 weeks after the gravity incident, Lyra woke up and realized she didn't hurt. Not the way she had before. The constant ache in her ribs had faded to a dull memory. Her knee bent without protest. The fog in her head had lifted. She ran a self-diagnostic on the medical scanner in her quarters. Clean. Better than clean. She'd healed more in 3 weeks than she had in 3 years. That's when she found the data packet on her terminal. Anonymous, but tagged with a small Vexari glyph that meant, "Pack protects pack." Inside was everything. Every scan, every biometric reading, every coordinated intervention. A complete medical workup more thorough than anything she could have ordered for herself. And at the bottom, a simple message. "You said you were fine. We made sure you were right." The Cubs. Lyra sat in her quarters for a long time, staring at the data. Then she did something she hadn't done in 15 years. She cried. The next morning, she walked into the medical bay where Rico was reviewing patient charts. He looked up, ears flattening in obvious anxiety. "Dr. Hale, thank you," she said simply. Rico's ears perked up. "For what?" Lyra smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "For not believing me when I said I was fine." The young Vexari's tail curled in. What she'd learned was their version of a smile. That's what Pack does. And for the first time in a very long time, Dr. Lyra Hale realized she wasn't alone. She had a pack, even if they were a bunch of meddling cubs who didn't understand the meaning of personal boundaries. She wouldn't have it any other way.